And Kingston in particular, will reach, by 2023, will reach tipping point where abnormal climatic conditions will be normal. So there's no going back to our good old days. This is it for us. So all those abnormal heat conditions, wind, rainfall, that we want to consider that they're abnormal, they're actually the normal conditions. So within the next 14 years, they will be the norm for us. So it means that all of our codes, regulation, plans, and all our policies that are based on wind, energy, heat, land, climate in general, will have, that were based on the old climate regime, will have to be redefined within this new tipping point of climate departure. Demographic dynamics, another one with migration patterns, and all the things that are happening. And counter globalization is basically globalization that is nationalistic, where there is more emphasis now on wireless interaction than on physical interaction, where persons are more willing to deal with you without being in contact with you physically. And the Brexit votes and the Brexit votes and the Obama exit vote are evidence of the new neo-globalization. I'm going to go to this. As it concerns energy, I'm going to keep that one. I'm going to offer you an alternative definition of how I interpret the topic. When I look at net zero, because I'm an urban planner and therefore I do not think buildings. I think cities, towns, I think on a wider concept, right? So I think that when it comes to spatial conditions and net zero, I'm looking at urban centers. And I'm saying the energy expelled by natural phenomena and by an expanding and complex demography are beyond the capacity of our current country environment to facilitate them. And therefore, we have disasters. Disasters is when a natural phenomena interact with a human system, and the system cannot have support it, so it collapses to the point where it requires outside assistance to bring it back to normalcy. All right, and that's what we call a disaster. So therefore, how do we locate and design our buildings and infrastructure, as we call them, cities together, to accommodate these energies that are expelled by natural systems? Rainfall, temperatures, wind, and tremors. How do we locate and design our building infrastructure that they can accommodate these energies? So the big concern here is, of course, urbanization. People say Jamaica is becoming urbanized. The fact is that Jamaica is not becoming urbanized. And I'll tell you why. Urbanization requires three things to happen. Let me find them. Three things. What we're experiencing in Jamaica is increasing population density. Urbanization must satisfy three criteria: density, population, density, increase in service provision, and a social transformation of people's mind and behavior. What we have is the first one. The other two are absent. And therefore what we have is a lot of persons living in spaces without things to accommodate them. And therefore, what we interpret as urbanization, with all the waste management concerns, with all the woes you can think of, is actually because we're having a lot of persons living in spaces that are not urbanized. Places that are still very rural in nature, but because of high density, we call them urban centers. And when you compare that to what PIOJ defines as urban, which this is the PIOJ definition of urban. And mark you, we have a Town and Country Planning Act in Jamaica from 1957 that doesn't define in any way what is town or what is country, which I think is sort of, you know what I mean by that, right? So the TCP Act doesn't define, so we do not have a legal definition of what should be urban in Jamaica. So saying we're urbanized, there is no standard to judge it by, all right? So that's the big problem. So what we have are people living in spaces without the prerequisite infrastructure and services. So what is urbanization? As we have more persons moving into an area that we call urban, for saying's sake, that space should provide those persons with increasing services and infrastructure to facilitate some sort of social-cultural transformation and clean living. We're not having that. And therefore, our so-called urban centers have not been able to provide a sort of environment for high-density population growth. Between Clarendon Park, for example, Clarendon Park out in Clarendon, before you start to go. Before you start to reduce it, right? Between Clarendon Park and Yalas, we have over 1.8 million Jamaicans living. Between Clarendon Park and Yalas. That is basically half the country. And we have from that amount, we have over 1.2 million who are living under informal conditions. Let me say that. 1.2 out of the 1.8 living under informal conditions. Now, the KMA, the Kingston Metropolitan Area, has what you call between 6 a.m. to maybe 7 to 8 p.m. may have over 1.3 million persons living, using the space. And it goes on to about 800,000 between 10 to 5 in the morning. Because a lot of persons coming to Kingston from the west and the east to use Kingston facilities. But Kingston's services are not designed or built to facilitate that transient population changes. For example, our parking regulations, they are the same throughout the entire day. They don't account for changes in population density over time. And that causes problems with the persons who live in Kingston after the foreigners have gone back to Portmore and St. Catherine and Clarendon and those areas. So you find that persons coming to Kingston in the day, they use Kingston water, they clog up the drains and the toilets, they do all these things and then they go back to where, right? And then the person in Kingston have to pay the taxes to get all that cleaned up, right? And so it creates kind of sort of inequalities in how we deal with the services that Kingston offers. And you'll find that the business services in those areas are deprived of the income of the persons who live in those areas, because they come to Kingston every day and their kids come with them, they shop in Kingston, the kids go to school in Kingston and they go back to Old Harbour, Spanish Town, St. Catherine, Maypen, and they spend the weekend there. Maybe the weekend is Sunday, because they're in town Saturday anyway for swimming and other things. So they spend one day for the week in there, and therefore it creates a whole heap of service provision challenges for Kingston. So within the context, the space is vulnerable because the built environment cannot accommodate the increase in population densities. So we have increasing frequency of disasters, of natural phenomena. We have increasing poor urban population. And one of the features of Jamaica's urbanization pattern is that increased densities take place in what we call second-tier cities, like Old Harbour, Linstead, Spaldings, Christiana, Santa Cruz, those secondary towns. Outside of the major urban centers like Maypen, Mandeville, Montego Bay. And when I say Mandeville, there's no Manchester. Everything is Mandeville. Like, everybody's from Manama, everybody's from Montego, everybody's from St. James, everybody's from Montego Bay and Mandeville. So we have like 12 parishes. Mandeville, Montego Bay, and then Clarendon, and right? So we have increase in spaces that do not have the requisite infrastructure to support population growth. And where there is, like in the KMA, for example, the KMA's drainage pattern was from the pre-1950s, when there were like 75,000 persons living in the KMA. Now it's over 1 million. On the same drainage system, the same road pattern, even though they have improved the service, but the same road pattern. We have basically put some highways through the city now, but it's the same pattern. One of the first laws of planning for transport system is that it should be easy to access the city and hard to easy to leave the city but hard to enter the city. That's the basic rule of transportation planning. And of course we have persons living on land that don't have services. No, I am not pro-squatting or anti-squatting. That squatting to me is a solution. The fact is that Jamaica's spatial pattern, how we use land spatially, was well ingrained in our DNA before there were any laws to manage how we use land. So when the laws came, it wasn't retroactive. Everything the law came and saw was illegal. And anybody who didn't fall in line with the law is still illegal. So we have persons who are still living in conditions that resembles the pre-emancipation spatial social situations in 21st century Jamaica, because the laws were not enough to get everybody on board, and therefore you're all squatters. Now, when you examine, which I have done, the layout of a squatter community and the layout of how the slaves lived on the plantation and the layout of a contemporary gated community, they're all the same. The difference is just the absence of infrastructure. So squatting is a place that lacks infrastructure. It has housing, and there are many persons who own houses who lack the same infrastructure and services as squatters. So why do we outlaw squatters so badly? Even though most of them take place on government lands anyway. Pardon? You can't pay taxes for land that you don't have access to, you don't own. So the problem is not the taxes. The problem is that I can't pay taxes for nothing because the land, I have no formal attachment to the land, so I can't pay for the land. Even though I want to pay for it, but I can't pay for it. But that's what the QA session, right? All right. So it's a case, I'm going to show you a slide. It's a case where the squatter communities resemble very, now this is a layout of Linstead. What's wrong here with the Linstead layout? We have a landform that is very undulating, hilly, but superimposed on that is a semi-gridiron pattern. And therefore, the energy expelled in traversing this by motor vehicle is considerably more than if the settlement design was aligned with the landform. So basically, our city building system facilitates flat land construction, right? So when we go to the hills, we spend a lot of money trying to fight the land to make it conform to the flat building systems. We drill and blast and dig and build retaining walls and spend billions to get the land ready for a flat building system. When the land is offering you an alternative to work with the land, But because our systems are for flat land, we expel more energy trying to get it ready for settlement than if we had used the land to define settlement in the first place. Now, one of the rules of because I think of energy construction as one that uses the site conditions to inform design, not vice versa. You don't say, okay, I want to put this house here and it must work. For example, when you look at, there's a retaining wall up in Jacksonville, right across from Bob Marley's property right there. You can see where they brought limestone from Red Hills and built a big retaining wall up in Jacksonville there. Now, they brought limestone from Red Hills to build a retaining wall in Jacksonville that has no limestone at all. You see the problem, right? When you bring in foreign material onto a land like Jacksonville, you're basically increasing the bearing capacity. So therefore, you're basically increasing the vulnerability for landslide to occur, because limestone is more dense than the sandstones that are available in Jacksonville. It goes the same way for our road construction. You can't build a road in Portland the same way you build a road in South Clarendon, because there are two different climatic and geological conditions. But right. So we have not been able to incorporate the local ecological conditions in how we design our roads, our cities, our buildings and infrastructure. And it is coming from far back as the European, the Columbus, British period. When the British came here in the 1600s, they had no time to understand what they saw. So everything was outlawed. We're going to make you guys civilized. And even before they had a chance to learn from the Tainos, well, in Kitty, the Spanish, they all died. So Columbus basically lost the opportunity to learn from the Tainos who were living here for over 3,000 years. How do you live on an island ecology? And before you could learn from them, they all died, and therefore he had to bring in, import his knowledge of what he knew in Europe on the island. Now, when the slaves came from Africa, we had the same problems. We still believe we live on a continent. That is why somebody's coming to driving a 5.7 V8 Land Cruiser from Ligani to New Kingston every day to work. Am I a person who see something wrong with that? That's less than 2 kilometers from Ligani to New Kingston. 5.7 for the women who understand motor vehicle terms. That's a big engine vehicle, 7-seater with one person in it, going from Ligani to New Kingston every day. All right. So we have not learned to adjust our life to island living to this very day. Not the Africans, not the Europeans, not the Asians, which are the three major ethnic groups on the island. Because we came from continental places, and therefore our building systems are still resembling those continental places. Let me go back, because I want to go local. So I look at the population change for second-tier cities, which are the small towns. I have Portmore, Old Harbour, Lindsay, Ocean, Bagua, Spalding, all those. And you can see the change in population growth between 82 and 2021 compared to the major urban centers of Maypen, Lucerne, Kingston, and so forth. Now what I did, I looked at the planning framework that each parish council uses. Now this is where it gets interesting, because, what we have is, the planning framework is basically the plan that guides development in each parish, right? So for the KCC, we have the 1966 development order, and the dates are here. Now, the fact is that you made the point earlier this morning, Jamaica doesn't have a national spatial plan. But if you put all these orders together, they will not form a coherent national plan. Because every coast is doing their own thing, and therefore, if you look at the dates of the recent ones are development or no. There are development orders and there are development plans. There are two overarching frames of planning. There is plan making and there is plan management. Now, plan management comes under, produces development orders, which are policy documents. Development plans, they speak to metrics, how you do things technically, quantitatively. You understand that, Mr. A, right? So what we have is a trend where most parish councils are going the route of preparing development orders, which means say we're going to build some houses, right? Now you can't say you're going to build some houses without having some graphic idea of what the houses will look like and where they'll be. So as a planner, when I hear the word like development, I have to think graphic. To me, it's not an abstract term. So therefore, the plan will say, I want to build 10,000 two-bedroom houses on this 5-acre land over the next 5 years. That's the plan. The parish councils are going into orders that speaks to things in general terms. And it's here, and this is like current figures. So all the parish councils are way behind in plan making. And therefore, with this kind of system at the local level, it will be impossible to incorporate net zero energy building systems inside local authorities with this current system. This has to change. I think nationally we're at a point where we have to decide, are we going to keep local government? If the answer is yes, it can't be kept in its current format. It has to change radically. If we're not going to keep it, then get rid of it and move on. But in its current form, it is wasting a lot of time and money and energy. And I think the minister should have been here when I'm saying this. Because in the current format, it is impossible to get anything done in the current format. All right? We have a case where, done properly, we have a case where the KMA has 6 billion officers who monitors project works inside the KMA. That's from as far as Rockall to Golden Spring to Bull Bay. All right? It's impossible. It's impossible. All right? And when you look at the kind of subventions that they have gotten over the last, from 2010 to 2013, I couldn't get the figures for 2016, 17, and see the subventions per council. And when you look at come back to those figures, look at the way they are used, 09 to 2015, the GKMSR is the Greater Kingston region that goes from Clydeland Park to Yallas. That's the Greater Kingston area, as against the Kingston and St. Andrew Metropolitan Corporation area. We have temporary bridges. This is the percentage of money spent, percentage of these that have been approved and built over these 4 years. We have a temporary bridge, permanent bridges. So it's saying that the building works in the parish councils are not going towards making them resilient. Here we have for new residential buildings, new commercial buildings, renovation of residential buildings, housing schemes, commercial plazas, new church buildings, and others. For the secondary cities, Ola, Spanish Town, Christian, and those centers. These are places that are vulnerable to multiple disasters. In June '86, I was in high school when we had the June '86 floods. I remember I couldn't go because I'm from a place in Clarendon that has a flood. It's very flood prone, called Town, K Valley. So we slept in the classroom for 2 days. and there were the floods last 2 weeks ago, and it's 30 years, and it is the same places, the same set of people, and the same things that were impacted. That means for the past 30 years, nothing has changed. And I bet you, my life, that next 30 years, if I'm around, we're going to be here saying the same thing again. Because the systems in place, there are too many systems in place that are maintaining the old order. When I was in Belize a couple of weeks ago, everybody in Parliament was below 50. I couldn't believe it. We have persons in Parliament that have been there since Columbus came. And it's not about the age, it's not about the age now. It's about the mental age. It's not about that person. Because when you have learned to define your livelihood on a system properly, you don't want it to change. Because if it changes, then your livelihood will be affected. So I'm not gonna change a system that is benefiting my livelihood. Right? So that's where we are with that. Let me go back to my slide. Now, because most development is taking place in second tier cities, these are some of the building stock that we must contend with. And places like Maypen, Linstead, Old Harbour, Christiana, these are some of the building stock that they have. Now, the building to my right, that's an energy efficient building. Believe it or not. That's not concrete, that's very cool, right? Yes. They had it right then. We at UTEC we had a building up Irish Town a couple months ago, Dr. Potapsin, with the guys from France, who they came to teach us how to do NAG construction. But they used the clay with the coconut husk. So I said to him, my grandmother's house was built with this. And he said, get out of here. I said, no. The difference is they use the BRC wire to line the building. No, the BRC wire on the pure clay over time will rust because the clay has probably rusted steel. So it was the same. But he couldn't believe that we had a system in Jamaica before they came. But these buildings are in fact, you can't see my finger pointing now. These buildings are in fact very energy efficient. No, these cannot be retrofitted. They have to be demolished. And this is the stock that is prevalent in most of our second-tier urban cities. And what happened with Spanish Town? You see, when we built the Mandela Highway, this was the first chance that Kingston got to breathe. Right? And Spanish Town became overrun with crime. Right? And then we expand the highway to Maypen, and the Maypen got overrun with crime. And then we send it to the north coast, then we're there from Mandela. So when they put the leg from Maypen to Williamsfield, it's Mandela's turn. Every time the highway expands into a city, Kingston expands with it. The bad part of Kingston, not the good part, the crime. So the crime is a direct consequence of improving access from Kingston to those centers. Right? So because urbanization begins first as a cultural thing. You know. When I go to my country in Inland Town, I see guys in the square because in their minds they're on their phones and cable every day. So they are living the MTV, VH1, the BET life in their minds. So the pants the trousers down, them knee them. They are in an urban culture. When they look out, when the phone dies off the battery, and they look up and they see banana yam, they say, where the heck am I? Because in their minds they are in the urban center. So they basically reject the rural setting that they're in. And the government when we build these housing schemes in these rural areas and put persons on lots, a lot living is not a rural activity, you know. When in the country you live on land, let's say got 2, 5, 20 acre land. The lot life is an urban life. So when we build lots in the in the rural areas, we are forcing persons to adopt an urban lifestyle in the rural areas, and therefore, what we call urban decay is persons trying to live the country life in town, and rural decay is persons trying to live the town life in the country. So you have a person in Kingston raising goats, chickens, pigs, they burn the garbage, because so there has to be a transformation of the mind. The Chinese, when they bulldoze these farms today and tomorrow put up high-rise structures, they send the farmers to urban schools to teach them how to be urban. They are saying, this is how this. So now you can't plant corn anymore. You're gonna work in a restaurant now. So persons are taught how to live urban lifestyle in China. They are synthesized. In Jamaica, you used to go. The highway was built and opened. There was no campaign to educate Jamaicans. This is how you should use the highway now. I see a person ask me, Dr. Beer, what does that sign mean? What that mean escape route? Why them have two, them have the broken white line against the continuous white line? What is it supposed to mean? I'm confused. Where should I go? Jamaicans are not educated on how to use the highway. When persons are given urban facilities, they should be taught how to use them. Persons go in the ATM machine and stand around. They choose, when you go to Old Harbour have 4 ATM machines. The NCB ATM speaks to you. That one is always crowded. It says, insert a card, please. But the one where you should go and read, they're always empty. Because an ATM is an urban facility. So when you put it in a country, that's why I have friends who only send me voice notes on WhatsApp because they can't type on WhatsApp. They send voice notes all the time. Because the WhatsApp thing is an urban thing. Right? So how do we know sensitize persons? And these are simple things. How do we know sensitize persons, and how do you know use energy? Because to the person in the country, you know, who have make a buckle lamp, but and I say buckle, not battle, in buckle lamp and in kerosene lamp and thing, and you need to improve your energy, your building carbon footprint. They look at you like, what the heck are you talking about? And there are those persons who live in the town areas also, who still believe that they live in the country. So there's a whole lot of social transformation that needs to take place before anything can be done. Doesn't matter how we make plans and policies. Person's mind need to be adapted to these kind of changes. Next slide. This is the right picture that's in Mapen. Currently, Mapen is a regional center for the entire Clarendon parish. And this is a commercial building in Mapen. All right? And you can see what's being built in the upper right-hand corner there. A lot of concrete, some small windows like a prison cell. So they are building for air conditioning, ignoring the outside ambient conditions. The left picture is Linstead, where street vending, which I like incidentally, is being facilitated. This again is Linstead. You see the buildings, the police station, the health center. These are places these things were built when Linstead was a rural town. Linstead is now an urban center, and they are still there. So the building stock, even before you think energy, the building stock itself has not been retrofit for urban living. It's still very well in nature. So we haven't even reached energy parties yet. Here we go again. Culture clash. This is Linstead. This is in Dunrobin in Upton Spring here. where persons, where the lifestyle is still, we still do not live in an urban environment for some persons, all right? Cultures are clashing, all right? So the fact is that we must now understand the process of urbanization in Jamaica. How do we know capital energy to inform our way forward in defining the urban environment? Because it begins first with urbanization. Person's mind must be transformed. We need proper infrastructure and services to accommodate population growth in these centers, right? We can't have a place where our people expanding, more persons living in areas without proper sanitation. One of the first evidences of a civilized society is separating our waste from where we live. That is not so in the KMA. Persons walk over open drains, sewage in the streets, raw sewage pouring out on the streets. You drive over it, you walk over it. Persons throw garbage out at a moving vehicle. That is not a government problem. When I see persons throw an empty carton box out their car, that isn't parliament problem. That is a social problem, right? So people's lifestyle and mental condition has to be transformed for urban living before they can even think of going green, of going efficiency with energy. I think I have exhausted my time. I see. That's it then. Thank you very much.